Since we have a quorum, I'll call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the representative town meeting of the town of Darien. It is the state of the town meeting. And the first order of business is to accept the agenda. Without objection, I will accept the agenda. Is there any objection?
Raise your hand if you have an objection. Hang on a second. Jack?
Seth, can we move item 620-28A to before 21-31? And then accept the agenda?
You want to move, give me that again.
We want to move 21-28A.
All right.
Before we do 21-31.
Okay. Is
And
there
then we
any?
can accept.
You were a little ahead of me, Jack, but go ahead.
Okay.
Is there any objection to doing that?
If you have an objection to that, please raise your hand. Hang on a second. Mr. Moore, you're self-muted.
Jack, can you explain why you want to move it?
Jack, you need to unmute yourself. Jack Davis, you need to unmute yourself.
Unmuted. Say that
Go
again,
ahead.
please.
He wanted to know why you want to move it.
Because it was supposed to be there first, and 28 goes before 31. It just made more sense to go over an amended resolution prior to going into the two new ones.
Okay. Are there any objections?
Hang on a second. No, looks like you're good.
Okay, so we'll, with everyone's permission, we'll do approval of the minutes at the next meeting. We have some corrections to make to these minutes that we just haven't had time to deal with today. And we discovered some changes have to be made. So what we'll do is we'll make the changes through the Rules Committee and again come back to you for approval of the minutes at the January 24th meeting, if that's acceptable to everybody. Anybody have an objection to doing that?
If you have an objection, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Jack, we're going to do 21-32 first. Is that the net here?
We're going to do 21-28A.
You want to do that one first?
That's correct.
All right. I recognize Jack Davis to report out as the chairman of F&B on 21-32.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 21-28A to amend Resolution 2128 adopted September 27, 2021, and to appropriate $669,100 to purchase and demolish the property located at 27 Crimmins Road, Darien, Connecticut, with the understanding that the town, and I quote, will subsequently be reimbursed by FEMA 75% of such cost for the acquisition and demolition of the property located at 27 Crimmins Road, unquote, as specifically stated in the resolution 2128A. Do I have a second?
Jenny Schwartz.
Thank you. If there's no objection, I waive the reading of the rest of the resolution. The town was recently informed that FEMA has changed the procedure for the acquisition of property under the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. The procedure now requires the sub-applicants, being the town, to pay for the agreed upon costs to be subsequently reimbursed by FEMA 75% of such costs. As such, the town must change its appropriation from the originally approved $167,275, representing the town's 25% share, to the full total estimated cost associated with said acquisition, was $669,100. The town will reimburse for its actual payments after the amounts are expended. Anticipated closing of the property is planned for January 2022, which constitutes the majority of the estimated cost being $631,500, representing land, structure, and appraisals. The additional costs of demolition of structures, site work, and miscellaneous remediation will occur subsequently and be reimbursed after the amounts are expended. The town anticipates reimbursement from FEMA by the end of the town's current fiscal year, being June 30th, 2022. This amendment to the original appropriation does not change the net amount anticipated of the town expense not to exceed $167,275, nor the allocation of the balance of the town's land acquisition fund to partially offset the drawdown from the town's general fund. As stated, this amendment also does not change the acquisition of said property, which was adopted by the RTM at its September 27, 2021 meeting. It solely amends the process for the transaction and the funding of said transaction. The amendment to the appropriation requires Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM approvals. The Board of Selectmen approved the amended appropriation on November 22nd. The Board of Finance approved the amended appropriation at their November 16th meeting. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee reviewed this amended appropriation, noting no change to the town's financial net amounts associated with the acquisition of 27 Crimmins. The committee voted unanimously in favor of Resolution 21-28A, amending RTM Resolution 21-28, and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees who wish to report out on this?
If anybody wishes to report, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anything, Seth.
Okay, any town officials wish to comment?
Any town officials, you'll have to open your mic. I think you're good, Seth.
Members of the RTM?
Okay. Hang on a second. Mr. Cusack, you need to unmute yourself.
It's Will Cusack from District 2. The statement that the RTM previously approved purchase of the property, that the purchase of the property was conditioned upon 167 from the town and then FEMA funding. But now it's FEMA that the town fronts the entire amount and then we get FEMA reimbursement. How could the town commit to purchase the property when the conditions have changed?
Jack or?
Kate, I don't know if you want to answer that or you want me to.
You go ahead.
Oh, thanks. The change occurred. We were notified after the submission and the approval process. Effectively, it does not affect the amount to be expended by the town, the net amount is the same. The only potential loss associated to the town on this is investment income. But with all due respect to our town treasurer, the rates are extremely low and the cost, if anything, is minimal. So effectively, this is how all hazard mitigation grant programs are now run. So it's not something that we have any authority to change. This is how the program's done. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Kate?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. The important part is that the town is only paying the 167. That has not changed.
Okay.
Mr. Marusek has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Marusek?
Yes, hi, this is Peter Marushak from District 3. I just have a question either for Kate or Jack regarding 110,000 for preparation of the application. Is it something we have approved before?
That's not anything to do with this resolution.
Yeah, that is a different resolution and is not part of this resolution. Has no bearing on it.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So we will discuss this later today, this additional.
Right afterwards, next
Okay,
resolution.
all right. So please remember, so I don't have to repeat it. Thank you.
Okay, any others?
Ms. Bacon, Liz Bacon.
Liz?
Liz, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, it's me, Liz Bacon, District 2. What kind of contract are we in with this? With the full amount? I mean, what if things were to change again? And is there a scenario by which we would be held responsible for the full amount, having made the commitment to pay the full amount?
No.
Yeah, I was going to give my glib response that I gave to somebody else who raised this. If we are saying that FEMA and the full faith of the U.S. government is not going to reimburse us for their share, we have a lot bigger concern than the amount that we're laying out. Because that's who's guaranteeing the amount that we're getting paid. It's a timing issue.
Mr. Moore has his hand raised again.
Are there any others who haven't spoken?
Actually, Liz asked the question that I had, but I wouldn't be so glib about it, Jack. The government is the government. Thank you.
Okay. Any others?
There are no others' hands raised.
Any members of the public?
Members of the public would have to unmute themselves. I'd say no, Seth. You're good.
There appear to be no other comments, therefore, are we ready to vote?
Okay. Hang on a second. All right. Ready to send out the poll?
No votes, please.
Oh, you want no votes?
Right.
Okay. If you wish to vote no on this resolution, please raise your hand. Okay. I have Elizabeth Bacon, William Cusack, Ed Washeka, Peter Marusek, Werner Domitner.
In that case, we will go to a poll vote.
No, you have four no votes, Seth.
Okay, so we'll go forward with a full poll vote. We don't have any.
You want a full roll call?
Correct.
Krista?
You were going to poll it, right?
I can poll it, but you had 4 people vote no.
Are there any abstentions? Seth, perhaps?
Yeah, okay, you have 3 abstentions, Cheryl Russell, Diane Conolog, Laura Pesci Gray.
Okay. But we can accomplish, well, all right. Then
We should not, this is
we've
Jack
got-
Davis. We should not be going to a full roll call. It's not close enough under the guidelines of the Rules Committee. So we should now, once we've recognized the no and the abstentions, go to poll.
All right. Thank-
Well, that's not what the governor's order is. Governor's order is that it's a roll call vote unless there are no votes, and unless it's a unanimous vote. So given that, I think we have to go to a roll call vote.
Seth, this is Wayne. I think the
Yeah.
system we had adopted previously would allow for the procedure we have just partially been through, which we record the no votes, we then record any abstentions, and everyone else is considered a yes vote without having to go through the entire roll of the entire
Thank you.
body.
Thank you, Counselor. That's terrific. Let's go ahead. That we've recorded those. We're going to assume everybody else voted yes, and that given that the motion passed. Do you have all of the no votes and the abstentions, Kate or Krista?
Kate, can you repeat the 4 no and the 3 abstentions if we're not going to do a roll, poll vote then?
I cannot unless those people want to raise their hands again, but it's on the tape, so we can listen to the tape. Would you like to have the no votes raise their hands again?
Yes, please.
Okay, if you wanted to vote no, please raise your hand again. All right, I see the same 4. William Cusack, Ed Washeka, Peter Marusek, Werner Domitner. Okay, if you want to abstain, please raise your hand. I have Cheryl Russell, Diane Conolog, Laura Pesci Gray.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you hang on a second? I have a hand raised.
Sure.
Ms. Holt,
Yes,
do you have a question?
I seem to remember Ms. Bacon was one of the, either the abstainers or the no votes.
My recollection is that she was a no vote. We'll have to, Liz Bacon, can you raise your hand if you were a no vote, please? Yep, there we go. You were a no vote, correct, Liz?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to 5 no votes then. Someone changed their mind?
5 noes, 3 abstentions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion passes. And we're on to the next item, which is 21-31. I recognize Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety.
Give me a second. Go ahead, Mac.
There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety. I move Resolution 21-31, approve funding of $110,000 to hire a consulting firm to assist with FEMA grant applications. Do I have a second?
Waddy Plot.
Without objection, I will waive the reading of the resolution. The Public Health and Safety Committee met jointly with the Finance and Budget Committee on Monday, November 22nd. And I wanted to give a little bit of background. I think it'll help with the understanding of why we're asking for this appropriation. I'm going to refer to a memo that Deputy Fire Marshal Mark McEwen wrote to Kate Bush back on November 4th. It's titled Hazard Mitigation Grant Program Applications. This will just give some color. The residents of the watersheds that suffer from regular flooding events have been extremely hard hit this year, with 2 major flood events in less than 2 months. Some of these residents have expressed that flash floods not only endangered their properties, but many stated these storms had them fearing for their lives. In an effort to improve their circumstances going forward, I've met with many of the most severe cases and provided them with potential grant opportunities that exist that may assist them. The FEMA grants must be applied through the town as the subgrantee. The application process is a competitive one. Many municipalities apply and funding is never enough. It takes up to 3 years to find out the outcome of the requested projects. While we have recently found ourselves successful in the application for one resident on Crimmins Road, it took well over 2+ years. During this time frame, there were numerous reviews by the state and FEMA with adjustments that were necessary to our application. We've yet to receive the final contract, though we expect it any day after the public notice has been up to 30 days. I'm writing this note to express my concern to be able to provide the time to dedicate the families that wish to apply for either elevations or acquisitions. Since my job is split between emergency management and fire marshal duties, we are entering an extremely busy time in both areas. With the storms I've been involved with, subsequent damage reporting, and now we expect to be working on the public assistance for the town's reimbursement of expenses from the storm, budget season is upon us. Next, we will have large construction projects that are ramping up and requiring more of our time on site with inspections. So those are the things why we're getting to the crux of this is why we want to hire a consultant as opposed to having a town employee work with this. So we met, like I said, on November 22nd in a joint meeting. Wayne Fox attended. He gave his highlights of the hazard mitigation grant program. Jim Palin, chair of the Board of Finance, gave his overview. And finally, Jack Davis noted that by approving this funding, the town benefits by not having to hire additional employees, avoiding the added cost of staffing. So with all that, Public Health and Safety, with 10 of 14 members present, voted 8 to approve, 1 against, and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. I now recognize Jack Davis, Chair of Finance and Budget Committee.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. As Mac mentioned, the RTM Public Health and Safety and F&B committees had a joint meeting on November 22nd with Wayne Fox and Jim Palin also in attendance. I want to thank Mac for his report, and I will try not to reiterate items. I do want to add a little bit more color. I have honestly learned more about FEMA than I've ever wanted to know on this resolution. FEMA provides funds. The states are considered the applicant. The towns are the sub-applicants, even in those times when the town has no outright expense. The applications are either for elevation, and in those cases, the property owner would be paying 25%. If there is a purchase, then the town has the 25%. But even in those situations where the homeowner is picking up the 25% for an elevation, FEMA regulations has the town responsible for doing certain reviews during that process before funds are released to the homeowner or to the vendors that have done the job. So it's important that we get things right, because ultimately the town does have some responsibility on there. Back to the report. As stated previously, post-storm Ida, there was several properties interested in pursuing either elevation or acquiring their homes. While some may question is the town incurring expenses to benefit, another way of looking at it, as Mac mentioned, is from an opportunity cost. The head of our emergency management department estimates about 2 weeks of their time for every application. With a 10 to 13 potential homeowners, that would result in approximately 20 to 26 weeks of the town emergencies management time allocated solely to working with property owners. As mentioned, this individual is also the deputy fire marshal, and there's a lot of inspections that need to be done, including the inspection of the new Oxbridge School prior to its occupancy. When property owners, I mentioned that, hence the use of consultants with FEMA expertise, and that's what this organization has. They've worked either for the state or for FEMA, accomplishes several goals. Dewberry, the consulting firm, has expertise to advise property owners on the circumstances when FEMA might or might not consider an application. Expertise in working with property owners in preparing a very detailed FEMA application, ensuring all information is present and the application is accurate. Expertise in managing properties for elevations if and when, including review of designs, coordination of funders, contractors, the contractor engineers, and such management is the sub-applicant responsibility, with the town being the sub-applicant. And as we mentioned, it frees a town FTE to work on fire inspections, in reality does provide the town with revenue. The request for $110,000 is comprised of the first 3 levels, where the firm will screen about 10 properties for the benefit cost analysis eligibility for either elevation or acquisition, and the town expects certain property owners to not meet this eligibility. The contract is a time and materials not to exceed order. This provides flexibility in the scope of the work to be performed, and the major elements of the cost are stakeholder engagement, data collection, about $20,000, the benefit cost ratio, no-go, about 12, grant application development, about 39,000, project management, kickoff meeting, and travel, about 39, totaling the 110,000. This appropriation will be placed into a separate town fund specifically for this use. Funds as this will then be applied to pay the specific bills. And it should be noted the Board of Finance will maintain control of those funds. Once those funds are determined not to be needed anymore, the funds will be returned to the town general funds. That's where we're making this appropriation for. It's also important to note that this appropriation does not legally imply, as stated by Wayne Fox, and he may correct me if I misquote him here, and he's our town council, and he mentioned this at both the Board of Finance and the joint Public Health and Safety and F&B meetings. So it does not imply that the town is under any legal obligation to assist property owners with their applications. It does not apply helping current property owners. It sets a precedent for helping other homeowners in the future. It does not imply helping current property owners, does not set precedent or commit the town for participating in the purchase of that homeowner's property should the property be accepted for the acquisition by FEMA. It does not imply that the town's participation in these early phases will not commit the town to assist the property owner in the subsequent phases unless dictated by FEMA regulations, such as management of a home elevations, where the town is the subcontractor. Wayne also noted, and it was noted in both the Board of Finance and the joint meeting, that it will be important to communicate all of the above to set the expectations of any property owners for which we're working. The committee also discussed the need to have a policy for FEMA. When might the town pursue and when it might decline? This was a continuation of a discussion that F&B had in its September meeting and reported as such for the 27 Crimmins. It was a similar discussion that the Board of Finance had at its September 16th meeting regarding town FEMA policy. As one of our committee members stated, there are costs, expertise, and efforts required to develop these FEMA applications and costs associated with the applications that are awarded grants. A policy is needed regarding who will bear the cost burden. This would include to what degree the town as sub-applicant assumes these costs or requires the resident to assume them. The policy could also be used by government bodies in the future to review the expenses, such as the FEMA consulting firm. It should be noted that the original estimate provided to the town by Dewberry, the consultants, was for $196,629. That estimate included the full management through all phases, including post-award management, post-award management rather, and closeouts. Again, participation in these initial phases does not imply that the town will be involved in subsequent phases of the property owner's application and grant management unless dictated by FEMA regulations. The committee voted 9 in favor and 1 against and recommends the same to the full RTM. In a minority report, the 1 no vote was that the individual felt there was a need for a policy prior to the approval of the appropriation for a consultant. While others voted in favor of said appropriation for the consultant, many expressed similar need for the town to develop a FEMA policy. Thank you very much. End of report.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees of the RTM that would like to report?
Please raise your hand if you have a report. I'm not seeing any, Seth.
Okay, any town officials who wish to speak?
Town officials who wish to speak, you can unmute yourself. Not seeing any.
Okay, any members of the RTM?
Okay, I saw Mike Wheeler first.
This is Mike Wheeler from District 2. We went through this FEMA elevating process after Sandy in Rhode Island. The town in Rhode Island had received a grant from the state of Rhode Island through FEMA to elevate 10 or 11 houses. The Rhode Island town employees would tell you they were totally unprepared for the workload and to do their regular jobs. I looked at the impressive list today of towns and projects that Dewberry has worked with. They would be an invaluable time saver for both the town employees and the residents if any elevation grant money is forthcoming.
Thank you, Mike. Any other members?
Mr. Cusack?
Will Cusack, District 2. How many organizations did the town contact regarding assisting the town in filing FEMA applications, in addition to Dewberry?
Okay, this is Kate Bush, town administrator. We reached out to some known grant writers, and both the former first selectman, Jamie Stevenson, emergency management, Mark McEwen, and I also reached out to peer groups trying to locate grant writers. The only one that we were successful in being able to interview was Dewberry.
Thank you, Kate.
Ms. Bacon?
I guess I'm just wondering if this commits us to pursuing the the purchasing of these other properties that may qualify, and it seems to set in motion the what we just voted on, and it seems to make it a policy of sorts if we are in fact paying for the support of the FEMA process, the FEMA application process. Just a comment.
It does not commit us to the participating in the acquisition if any such grants are awarded. And the Board of Selectmen is starting to work, well, I should say I as staff am starting to work on a policy that will be presented to the Board of Selectmen to approve for land acquisition.
Kate, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, this is Monica McNally, your first selectman. And Liz, to your answer, this does not commit us to anything. If anything, I would like to take this opportunity to make it clear that this resolution is not committing funds for the acquisition, the repair, the costs, anything in conjunction with these applications. And if the homeowner wants to pursue this and there are any other additional costs for testing or resources that have to be discovered, that will all be on the homeowner. We feel that this is an important thing to do. This was a disaster declaration, and this is the right thing to do to help our residents. But I want it to be perfectly clear that this is what we're offering, is help for you to apply for a grant. It is not committing us to pay any additional funds, including the 25% portion of an acquisition cost that we have incurred with Crimmins. That is not going forward going to be a set policy. I hope that answers your question. At this time and for this limited purpose, I support this funding request. Thank you.
Kate,
This is
sorry.
Wayne, if I might just,
Thank you, Kate. Any other?
Yeah, Werner Domitner.
Hi, Werner Domitner, District 4. I have a question. Should this not go through, would the impacted households or homeowners have the ability to share into that bill to help with the application?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from?
Seth, this is just Wayne. If I might just add one comment. I think the conclusion that was stated by both Kate and by Monica is correct. It's a very fair question, which I understand it to be, but we are not obligating ourselves for any additional spending in the future. It is not uncommon for us to approve funding for a particular project one year and then the next. We, the RTM, as well as the town, have significant discretion as to how we spend our money. So I am not concerned about it setting precedent. It is my firm opinion that it does not.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Are there any
Seth,
other?
this is
Jack
Jack
Davis.
Davis. I
Jack.
also want to add, this is a discussion that at both the Board of Finance and the Joint Committee had to resolve. Yes, we are helping property owners in town, and it's almost a moral obligation, so to say. But more importantly, what this is, and it's what Mike Wheeler had mentioned, we look at this as being that we're freeing up an FTE to do the work that they have to do in order to make budget and have projects and other things move forward. And the amount of time that they would have to do in just reviewing the application so the first selectman could sign is rather significant. And having people with the expertise to shepherd people through and free up our people to do what their main job is, I think is significant. And that's how F&B looked at it, as being more of an opportunity course that we're saving town resources by having the consultants do it instead of town employees.
Thank you, Jack. Are there other comments from the members of the RTM?
Yeah, Ms. Bacon.
No, I lowered my hand, but I will say that what the only part of this conversation I find compelling is that it will allow the people who already have a full-time job to do their full-time jobs as opposed to being siphoned off to do this other work. So in that respect, I do support it, but I am leery of going down this road. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Liz, are there any other comments?
Hang
from
on a
members
sec.
of the RTM?
Looks like Martha Banks.
Martha?
Yes. My question is, why is the town fully funding this? I mean, it doesn't appear that the homeowners have any skin in the game. Yes, there is a process and it's complicated, and I'm grateful that, our town employee won't be overburdened, but why is it that the town is fully footing this bill?
Because we felt that was the appropriate way to go. That's open to change, but that's what the administration felt was the right approach.
Yes,
Mike?
I would agree. I would agree with that. We felt that this was a service that we should provide to people in town that need this when a federal disaster has been declared. And as Mike Wheeler said, the Dewberry, the proposed project manager on this, was the Deputy State Hazard Mitigation Officer for 9 years and did the last 2 updates to the State Hazard Mitigation Plan. And if residents want to file for these grants, the town has to sign, I have to sign off on these. And the grants need to be written correctly. The last thing we want as a town is for the grants to come back with mistakes and be held liable for that. So yes, we could ask residents to pay a portion of this. I believe that they will be incurring other costs in this process, as well as finding themselves in a situation with either an acquisition or an elevation on their home that probably isn't the financial outcome that they wanted. So that's where I stand. Thanks, Martha, for the question.
That was Monica McNally. Are there others?
Mike Wheeler?
If there's no money that's allocated, the vast majority of this money is not going to be spent, correct? I looked at the budget and most of the money goes to, if money is received for an elevation, that's when the supervisory money is spent. But to get the applications in, if no money comes back from the state, how much of this money is going to be spent?
This money is intended to get us through the application process. It assumes we have about a dozen homeowners who have expressed interest, and the assumption is that 7 of those would make it through the process, through the analysis, like the go, no-go analysis, and that that more likely than not, the 7 would be for elevations rather than acquisitions. So it's all to get us to that point where the applications are submitted.
And if none of them, if no money if no grants are allocated.
When you say no grants are allocated, do you mean the federal government has not?
They're not successful.
No, so this is to get them to see if they are, get them to the point that the application is submitted. Then, if they're successful, that's a whole nother story.
So Mike, this is to get to stage 3 of 5 stages to, as Kate said, to get to the cost benefit analysis to see if it even makes sense for the remaining homes to continue. So this is, time and materials costs that will be incurred in the first 3 stages.
You don't know yet if the state has received any FEMA funding for these projects?
It actually doesn't have to be specific to this project. We can apply for grants under a number of projects that may or may not be related to the storm that these people actually had the most recent damage from.
Okay, thank you.
This is Jack Davis. I want to add also, and this is one of the things on how these funds are being accounted for. By moving it into a separate fund, if we end up with only 3 applications, there will be funds left in there. The way the contract is structured gives the town flexibility on its funding. So, the fund will be reviewed and by both the Board of Finance and, quite honestly, the RTM F&B. And if there's no further use of these funds, that we've completed this phase and we're not doing phase 4 or 5, then the funds will be returned to the town coffers. And that I can promise. I'm sure Jim Palin, who's on this area, also will be reviewing this at year end, as will F&B, so that I would agree that while we're appropriating 110, I would be surprised if we spent the full amount. That's just my opinion.
Okay, Seth, we have one more, Rolf Oben.
Rolf?
You need to unmute yourself, sir. There you go.
Yes, thank you. This is Rolf Oben, District 2. I'm interested to know that this has come before the RTM in today's meeting, so it appears that there is an urgency to getting this voted on. So my question is that the case? Is there a deadline that we're working against? Because I am a little perplexed as to the fact that we're moving ahead on appropriations without having yet developed a policy for it.
There is some urgency to get these moving, get the applications in. The policy that we're developing is for actual acquisition of the land, since this approval would not obligate us to actually purchase, or I should say to fund the purchase. I think we can proceed with this without having finished a policy for whether or not we would actually purchase any of the homes if they got an acquisition grant. Seth, you have Clara Sartori, who has not spoken on this yet.
Okay, Clara.
It's Clara Sartori. Just to a correction, I think Mr. Olben is in District 4, not District 2, as he mentioned.
Thank you.
Is anyone
okay.
else?
Yeah, we have Liz Bacon again.
No,
Okay.
no, that was an error if I raised my hand, sorry.
Okay.
And Martha Banks.
How are we doing here, everybody? We ready to vote?
You have Martha Banks with her hand raised still.
I have one more comment, and I am glad to see that a policy is in the works with regard to acquisition, but I think a policy should be included also with regard to this type of situation, the need to hire consultants to help with these applications, because as we go down the road, I think we're going to have more and more of these events, and presumably, there'll be other individuals that may want to apply for FEMA applications. And so I think we have to have a policy. Is the town always going to assume the cost of the application process, or is there going to be some sort of split? Just a comment with regard to development of policy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Martha.
You have Ed Washeka.
Ed.
Yes, thanks. Hi, Ed Washeka, District 3. Look, I guess my comment on this is I hope we don't have a policy where we're going to buy houses for demolition. I don't support the consultant, even though it may be a better use of money than town personnel. I just don't think we as a town should be spending money on houses that are at risk of being flooded. That is something for the property owner.
Agree.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any others?
Nope. Not
All
seeing
right.
any others.
Any members of the public?
If you're a member of the public and you wish to speak, please unmute yourself. I think you're good, Seth.
Okay, we're ready to vote, are we? All right,
Yes. Shall I launch the poll?
let's proceed.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So Seth, we do have some no votes. So I believe our policy is you're going to need to call for the no votes and the abstentions.
Yes. Yes, can we raise your hand so we can
Okay, give me a-
recognize for
give me
the
one
no
sec.
votes and the abstentions? We'll do the no votes first.
Okay. All right. No votes. Raise your hand. Okay. I have Kirk Ruddy, Sarah Baldwin, Cheryl Russell, Diane Conolog, Holly Mitchell, Iris Mix, Ed Washeka, Sue Ellen Mitchell, Jim Cameron, Martha Banks, Werner Domitner, Martha Luz, Meg Bat. Did you get that, Krista?
I got most of them.
Okay, let me go through it again.
Yeah, one more time. Ruddy, Baldwin, Russell, Conolog,
Mitchell,
Mitchell,
Mix, Washeka,
mm-hmm.
Sue Ellen Mitchell, Cameron, Banks, Domitner, Luz, and Bott.
Got it. Thank you.
If you abstained, please raise your hand. I have, okay, abstaining Bacon, Millar, Sherwood, Marusek, Oben.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
Oben.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Seth?
Okay, the motion passes.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, the motion.
We're on to item 2132. I recognize Jack Davis, Chair of F&B Committee.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 21-32 to appropriate the sum of $82,241 from the General Fund to the Reserve Fund for capital non-recurring expenditures. Do I have a second?
Jim Cameron.
Thank you, Jim. If there's no objections, I waive the reading of the resolution. The Finance and Budget Committee reported at the September 27th RTM meeting that the Board of Finance approved an appropriation for $147,862 from the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures Capital Reserve for the replacement of 3 Board of Ed vehicles determined to be total losses due to the flooding that occurred during Storm Elsa. Both the RTM Education and the RTM Finance and Budget Committees reviewed this transaction prior to the Board of Finance's September 21st meeting and agreed with the Board of Finance's approach to use Reserve Fund Capital Non-Recurring Asset Expenditures Capital Reserve. A bit of background to the new members of the RTM. The Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures is the town fund for capital projects. It is under the management of the Board of Finance once a project's appropriation is approved. The net amount for that project is if either over or under its original approved appropriations are closed into the capital reserve. The capital reserve can be used at the sole discretion of the Board of Finance to fund unforeseen capital needs, fund minor cost overages in the capital projects, and/or allocate funds to offset budget capital requests during the budget process, as was done last year. The Board of Ed vehicles qualifies as an unforeseen capital need. The appropriation of $147,862 for these 3 vehicles was the gross amount as required by government. It was understood that the insurance proceeds relating to the vehicle replacement was to be returned to the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures upon receipt. The insurance proceeds were deposited in the town's general fund. This resolution represents the transfer of said funds from the general fund to the Reserve Fund for Capital, as was agreed upon once the insurance proceeds were received. A minor note, at the time of the original appropriation, the Board of Ed estimated insurance proceeds to be $82,241. The actual insurance proceeds were $82,741, or $500 higher than the original estimate. Hence, the out-of-pocket cost for replacing the vehicles was $65,121. A good lesson learned on taking the high ground during future storms. Approvals for such transfer from the town's general fund require Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM approvals. The Board of Selectmen approved this transfer at their October 19th meeting. The Board of Finance approved this transfer at their November 16th meeting. The RTM F&B Committee voted unanimously to approve this transfer from the town's general fund to the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees that wish to report on this?
Please raise your hand if you have a report. I don't see any hands raised, Seth.
Okay, any town officials wish to speak?
Town officials, if you want to speak, please unmute yourself. Not seeing anything, Seth.
Okay, any members of the RTM?
Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, any members of the public?
Again, members of the public, unmute yourself. I think you're good, Seth.
Okay, we're ready to vote then.
All righty. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Seth, we do have a no vote and an abstention.
Okay, let's proceed to record the no votes and then the abstentions.
If you are in the no vote, please raise your hand. Andrew Millar. Abstention, Seth?
Abstentions?
If you abstained, please raise your hand. Not seeing any hands go up. We'll be able to see the report after.
All right. Means the item passes. We now move to the next part of the meeting, which is the State of the Town presentations. And there are a number of ways that you can reach these presentations. There was a memo put out by Krista earlier today, which describes the different places where you can find the presentations. You can tune in to channel 79 on Altis if you're in Darien, or you can watch on a web stream on YouTube. And she gives an address where you can pull up YouTube. You can also see it on Facebook, at Darien TV 79 on Facebook, and on Twitter. Again, Darien TV 79 on Twitter. So we'll go ahead and switch over now, and I'll give you a few minutes here to kind of switch over into the next media for this presentation. Thank you.
Seth, do you plan on, are you adjourning this or are you?
Well, we'll adjourn the meeting after the presentations.
I think some people may not have gotten the links, so if you give me a second, it's on the town's Facebook page, or the town's Twitter feed. The information was posted there, the links. So if you go to those pages, I don't believe I can bring them up on the screen. Okay.
The YouTube address is a little long, the channel 79.
If you go, okay, so here's, let's see. All right, if you go to the town's webpage, go to Departments and Services. You can see I've got it on the screen now. Click on TV channel 79, and you should be able to stream it right from there. Okay.
So, Kate, what we'll
You do not have to, for those asking, you do not have to stay on the call. We're going to close this down.
Right. We're gonna close go to webinar.
Yes.
Okay. Makes
Okay.
sense.